The city's pulse quickened, an erratic heartbeat beneath the neon-lit haze that cloaked its sprawling streets. In the subterranean depths where Umbra's cable once held iron grip, cracks now yawned wide. Shadows, once subtle puppets in a grand design, writhed with newfound ferocity, their chaotic dance a reflection of the fractures tearing the network apart. Elias Cade and Mira Voss moved through this turbulence like wary specters themselves, their steps muffled against the rain-slick pavement of the lower city. The chill seeped through Elias's worn trench coat, but it was the cold dread gnawing at his mind that truly unsettled him. Each flicker of peripheral darkness threatened to erupt into violence, shadows detached, untethered, and unrelenting. "They're tearing themselves apart," Mira murmured, fingers dancing over her portable holo interface as she tracked erratic shadow signals. Umbra's fractures aren't just political infighting. They're rebleeding into the shadows themselves. Elias's gaze sharpened, scanning the shifting silhouettes cast by fractured neon. That means this rebellion. It's no longer controlled, it's pure chaos. They paused at a corner where the faintest whisper of movement caught Elias's eye. A shadow detached abruptly from its trembling owner, a young man caught in the crossfire of a brewing riot. The shadow twisted grotesquely, its form pulsing with malevolent energy before it lunged, striking indiscriminately at protesters and enforcers alike. The air erupted with screams and shouts, a cacophony of human and shadow in violent collision. "We need to contain this," Elias barked, drawing his weapon, its barrel spewing a faint blue glow designed to disrupt shadow movement. Mira's fingers flew, deploying digital nets that shimmered briefly before snaring the rogue shadow in a cage of light and code. The captured shadow writhed, its form flickering erratically, as if protesting its sudden imprisonment. Elias felt a shudder ripple through him, a reflexive shiver born of the intimate terror that shadows could no longer be trusted, not even his own. Back in their makeshift command center, the tension was palpable. Mira's eyes never left the screen, where fractured data streams painted a grim tableau of Umbra's unraveling. Operatives once bound by shared ambition now clawed at one another with venomous suspicion, their whispered betrayals echoing down cold corridors. Elias clenched his jaw, the weight of impending collapse settling like a stone in his gut. "This is more than a rebellion," Mira said softly, exhaustion threading her voice. "It's a war between the shadows of power, and we, caught in the middle." Late into the night, atop a crumbling rooftop overlooking the restless city, Elias and Mira surveyed the chaos below. The streets writhed with shadows darting unpredictably, their forms elongated and distorted against the fractured glow of streetlights. The cold air bit at their exposed skin, breaths visible in the darkness. "We're running out of time," Elias said, voice low, eyes scanning the horizon. "Umbra's losing control, but so are we." Mira nodded, a steely resolve sharpening her features. "Then we strike now, before the city burns beyond repair." The fragile alliance of hunter and hunted, human and shadow, teetered on the edge of oblivion. As the city's neon veins pulsed with erratic light, the battle for control of shadows, souls, and survival raged in the depths below, threatening to consume them all. Yet amidst the chaos, a singular truth crystallized. In this city of fractured light and darkness, the shadows were rising, and they would not be silenced. The dim glow of the safe house's multiple monitors painted Mira's face in fractured light. The sharp angles of her features softened only by the shadows that danced with each flicker of encrypted data scrolling across the screens. Outside, the city's neon haze bled through the grimy windows, casting spectral hues that seemed to mock the fragile hope she clung to. The encrypted files revealed a fresh urgency. Umbra's network had shifted tactics again, their moves more brazen. The rebellion gaining momentum as chaos rippled through the Megacity's veins. Mira's fingers hovered over the keyboard, hesitant. The past clawed at her ghosts from her days as a cyber activist rose unbidden, the late nights spent hacking oppressive corporate systems. The rallies in rain-drenched streets, the idealistic chants that now felt like hollow echoes. She had chosen this path to protect, to bring order from the chaos she once helped ignite. Yet, now standing at this intersection of past and present, the lines blurred. Was she betraying her own beliefs by enforcing the law she once sought to dismantle? Or was this the only way to shield the innocent from a darkness that had grown beyond control? The thought gnawed at her, fracturing the resolve she usually wore like armor. Footsteps approaching the safe house snapped her back to the present. Alias stepped inside, his tall frame silhouetted against the neon glow spilling from the street. His eyes, shadowed and wary beneath the brim of his worn trench coat, locked onto hers with an intensity that spoke of shared battles and unspoken fears. "Another long night?" he asked quietly, voice rough but steady. She nodded, the tension in her jaw betraying the storm beneath. Umbra's moves are escalating. They're not just destabilizing the city anymore, they're reshaping it. Alias closed the distance between them, dropping a worn folder onto the cluttered table. "We'll need every edge we can get, but you don't have to carry this alone, Mira." Her gaze softened, the weight momentarily lifting. "I know, and I'm grateful. But sometimes I wonder if I'm still the person who fought for the city's freedom, or if I've become just another cog in the machine." Silence stretched between them, thick with shared pain and precarious hope. Later that evening, they found themselves on a rain-soaked rooftop, the oppressive drone of neon signs and distant sirens weaving a melancholic symphony around them. The city sprawled endlessly beneath, a labyrinth of light and shadow, order and chaos. Elias's hand brushed gently against Mira's, a gesture small yet profound in the cold night air. "We've both lost so much," he murmured. "But whatever happens, we face it together." She nodded, drawing strength from his presence, even as uncertainty gnawed at her heart. Their partnership had weathered storms of paranoia, betrayal, and fear. Now, it was evolving into something fragile, but real, an anchor in a city unraveling at the seams. Back inside the precinct, the tension between them surfaced. Mira's frustration boiled over in a heated exchange about trust and loyalty. "You can't keep shutting me out, Elias," she insisted, eyes blazing. "We need honesty, not silence." His reply was wary but firm. "I'm trying to protect you. Protect us." But this, he gestured vaguely toward the shadows that clung to the city walls. "This isn't just about us anymore." The air grew heavy with unspoken fears. Their gazes locked, the vulnerability beneath their hardened exteriors laid bare. It was a moment of reckoning, a crossroads where trust and doubt collided. As Mira slipped away into the night from a flickering street lamp, Alias watched her silhouette merge with the shadows. The neon lights above sputtered, casting an eerie glow like a dying ember. The city, like them, was caught between light and darkness, hope and despair. In this crucible of uncertainty, both knew that the choices ahead would define not only their futures, but the very soul of the city they fought to save. And as the shadows crept ever closer, the lost light within them flickered, fragile, uncertain, but still burning. The night whispered promises of danger and revelation, and neither Elias nor Mira could afford to ignore its call. The air was thick with an oppressive humidity as Elias Cade descended the rusted metal stairs of the abandoned subway station. The city's forgotten veins pulsed beneath his feet, dark arteries filled with stale air and the scent of decay. Neon signs, half destroyed and flickering erratically, cast fractured pools of sickly light that barely penetrated the dense gloom. Every step echoed like a gunshot, swallowed instantly by the cavernous space. He pulled his worn trench coat tighter around him, the fabric damp from the pervasive moisture. Fragments of graffiti sprawled across cracked tiles, twisted faces, cryptic symbols, and words that seemed to shift when not looked at directly. The whispers began almost imperceptibly, curling around the edges of his hearing like a cold breath. Alias paused, senses sharpening, heart hammering. The voices were neither male nor female, neither young nor old, an impossible chorus murmuring secrets just beyond understanding. He forced himself onward, the walls closing in as the shadows lengthened and thickened. His own shadow moved beside him, but something was wrong. It hesitated, flickering as if uncertain of its place. A twitch here, a subtle distortion, their small betrayals that gnawed at his resolve. The boundary between self and shadow was fraying. Suddenly, the shape of his shadow elongated grotesquely against the cracked concrete, twisting into forms that mocked his movements with cruel precision. The darkness around him pulsed. It was no longer passive but seemed to breathe, alive with malevolent intent. Elias's breath caught as he heard a distorted echo of his own voice, a distorted whisper calling his name from the depths of the tunnel. Elias. The sound was a rasp, familiar yet alien, a lure into the abyss. He clenched his jaw, forcing the creeping panic back. Memories surged unbidden, his lost family member, the violence of shadows past, the betrayal stitched into his very skin. They clawed at his mind, threatening to unravel the fragile threads of his sanity. In the distance, the faint glow of an exit flickered, but Elias ignored the instinct to flee. He pressed deeper, drawn by a mixture of dread and determination. The underground factory loomed ahead, a skeletal relic of industry long dead. Inside, the shadows coalesced into a shifting mass, a rogue entity that absorbed the feeble light and moved with unnatural fluidity. Elias faced it alone, the air vibrating with a palpable menace. His pulse thundered in his ears as the memories of loss and pain slammed into him with renewed force. The shadow hissed, a sound like cracking ice and whispered threats, a reflection of all the horrors Elias had fought to suppress. Yet amid the oppressive darkness, a soft glow appeared. Mira stepped forward, her presence a beacon in the abyss. Her short hair framed a face etched with concern and fierce resolve. The shadows seemed to recoil, reluctant to approach where her light touched. "Elias," she said quietly, "you are not alone." Her words were a fragile lifeline. For a moment, the suffocating dread loosened its grip. They exchanged a glance heavy with unspoken fears, the weight of their shared burden palpable between them. Together, they stood against the encroaching darkness, the fragile boundary between self and shadow trembling but not yet broken. The abyss beckoned still, but Elias's resolve, bolstered by Mira's presence, held firm for now. As they prepared to move forward, the shadows whispered anew, a chorus of lost souls and fractured identities. The city's dark heart beat steadily beneath their feet, a reminder that the fight was far from over, and the abyss was only beginning to reveal its true face. The laboratory was a chaos of humming machinery and flickering screens, shadows cast long and strange across the cluttered walls. Elias Cade stood rigid, his trench coat hanging heavy from his broad shoulders, eyes fixed on the disheveled figure of Dra Leonard Huxley. The scientist's face was drawn, his gaze sharp despite the exhaustion that clung to him like a second skin. He held a small, intricate device in his hands, its surface alive with pulsing blue light. "This is it," Huxley said, voice low, reverberating in the cramped space. "The procedure to reclaim a detached shadow. It's not just a retrieval, it's a merging, a synthesis. You won't just get your shadow back. You will become something different." Elias swallowed hard. The weight of those words settled into his gut like cold lead. He had hunted shadows long enough to understand that control was an illusion. Now, he faced the terrifying prospect of surrendering parts of himself to gain dominion over what had once been his own. Different how? Elias demanded, the edge in his voice betraying the storm beneath his stoic exterior. "It's not just physical," Huxley explained, gesturing to the device. "Your consciousness will intertwine with the shadow's essence. Memories, emotions, impulses, all the things your shadow has evolved, while detached, will merge with your own psyche. The risk is fragmentation. You might lose the continuity of self, become fractured." A cold silence followed. Elias's mind raced back over the months of relentless pursuit, the betrayals, the loss, his own shadow's betrayal being the deepest wound. He thought of Mira, her steady presence, the fragile hope she represented amid encroaching darkness. Later, in the small, sparse safe house where they had taken refuge, Mira sat across from Elias, her piercing eyes searching his face. She reached out, her hand steady as it clasped his. "You are not alone in this," she said softly. Whatever happens, we face it together. Elias looked down at their joined hands, the warmth a stark contrast to the cold dread gnawing at his insides. I don't know if I'll be the same when this is over, he admitted, voice barely above a whisper. Maybe you won't, Mira replied, but whatever you become, I'll stand by you. The following evening, Elias found himself alone on a rooftop overlooking the sprawling megacity. Neon lights flickered beneath a sky thick with haze, casting the city in a surreal, otherworldly glow. The wind tugged at his coat, cold and unforgiving. His shadow stretched unnaturally long and twitchy, erratic in its movements as if eager and reluctant all at once. He grappled with the agonizing choice before him. To reclaim his shadow was to confront the very essence of his fractured identity. The ritual promised power, but at what cost? Was he prepared to risk losing the man he was, the self he had fought to protect? As the city breathed a mechanical symphony below, a sudden shift in the air heralded a vision dark and disorienting. Before him stood a distorted version of himself, the shadow now fully embodied, a sinister doppelganger with eyes that gleamed malevolently. It spoke without words, a silent challenge that echoed in the deepest recesses of Elias' mind. The confrontation was not just physical, it was existential. Elias fought to assert his claim over identity, control, and survival against the shadow self that threatened to consume him. Back in the lab, under Huxley's watchful eye, Elias prepared for the ritual. The device hummed to life, blue light bathing the room in an eerie glow. Mira's presence was a balm, steadying him as the procedure began. Pain and disorientation followed, a tempest of sensation as shadow and man collided within the depths of his consciousness. Memories blurred, emotions twisted, and for a moment, Elias feared he had already lost the battle for his soul. But as the light dimmed and the hum faded, he opened his eyes. The shadow at his feet moved in perfect sync, tethered once more to the man who had once pursued it and now reclaimed it. Yet the victory was bittersweet. Elias felt the fracture within, a splintered self that no longer fit neatly into the world he had known. The price of control had been paid in full, and the road ahead promised no easy redemption. Mira's voice cut through the lingering haze, firm and unwavering. We move forward, together. Elias nodded, steeling himself against the uncertainty. The final confrontation loomed, the battle against the Umbra network, the Shadow Rebellion, and his own fractured identity. He had reclaimed his shadow, but the war for the city and his soul was far from over. And as the neon city pulsed beneath them, alive with shadows and secrets, Elias stepped into the night, a man remade but forever changed. The night pressed down on the city like a shroud, the neon lights flickering with an almost conspiratorial tremor. Within the cramped underground safe house, Elias Cade sat hunched over a cluster of glowing screens, each one alive with streams of encrypted data. Beside him, Mira Voss tapped relentlessly at her keyboard, the sharp clatter of keys punctuating the heavy silence that wrapped them both. There Mira whispered, her voice low and urgent, "Look at this cluster of transactions. Umbra's financial fingerprints all over the city's major corporations. This isn't just a rebellion, it's a calculated takeover." Elias's eyes narrowed. The evidence on the screens was damning, shadowy figures masked by layers of digital obfuscation, puppeteering the city's most influential entities. The tangled web was vast, implicating politicians, corporate magnates, and even elements within the police force itself. "They've been pulling the strings from the very top," Elias murmured, feeling the weight of the revelation sink deep. "This isn't just chaos. It's a coup from the shadows." Mira's fingers hesitated before she pulled up a new file, a series of intercepted communications between Umbra operatives. The messages were laced with coded threats and strategic directives, revealing how the shadow detachments had been weaponized to sow fear and destabilize the populace. A sudden noise outside the safe house snapped their attention toward the door. Elias motioned for silence, his hand inching toward the concealed pistol beneath his coat. Through the grimy window, the silhouette of a figure emerged, moving with calculated stealth. It was Juno, the street informant, clutching a small data drive. "Got something," she whispered urgently, slipping inside and handing over the drive. "It's from inside the Umbra network itself. Direct orders, names, dates. Everything." Elias connected the drive to the main console, the screen flooding with new revelations. Names that had been whispered in the darkest corners now flashed boldly: city council members, industrial tycoons, and even Captain Rourke's name appearing in encrypted logs. Rourke, Elias breathed, the sting of betrayal sharp and immediate. He's been feeding them intel all along. Mara's gaze hardened. We need to move fast. If the captain's compromised, the entire department could be a liability. The room's atmosphere thickened with urgency. Elias reached for his coat. "We're recalling a meeting. It's time to gather whoever we can trust." The following hours blurred into a fevered haze of whispered phone calls and hurried rendezvous. Allies gathered in a cramped, cluttered room lit only by the pale glow of data streams and scattered maps. Each person brought pieces of the puzzle, their faces etched with exhaustion and resolve. Leonard Huxley was among them, his disheveled appearance belying the storm of knowledge he carried. Under the flickering fluorescent lights of a sterile lab, he had revealed the genesis of the shadow detachment phenomenon, a series of unethical experiments designed to sever the bond between body and shade. Umbra weaponized the shadows, Huxley confessed, voice trembling. They wanted control not just of people, but of their very essence. I was part of it, and we spent years trying to undo the damage. Elias studied the man, torn between suspicion and the desperate need for information. "Why help us now? Because," Huxley said, eyes haunted, "if Umbra succeeds, the city will be lost to an endless night." As plans crystallized, a storm raged outside, the rain pounding against grimy windows like a drumbeat to the city's collapse. Elias and Mira prepared for the inevitable confrontation, knowing their enemies lurked not just in the shadows, but within the very institutions meant to protect the city. Later, in a rain-drenched alley, Elias confronted Agent Klein. The operative's cold smile was a mask merging with the darkness, his presence a chilling reminder of the enemy within. "You're running out of time, Detective," Klein hissed, voice like ice. "Umbra controls everything. The shadows will consume you." Elias's grip tightened on his pistol. "Then I'll fight until there's nothing left to consume." This was more than a battle for the city's soul, it was a war for identity, control, and survival. As dawn threatened to break, Elias and Mira stood ready to strike at the heart of the Umbra network, their resolve steeled by the knowledge that failure meant oblivion. The city waited, breath held, as the shadows gathered for the final reckoning. The rain had been relentless all evening, drumming a steady rhythm that mingled with the distant sirens and the muted hum of the city's neon heartbeat. Elias Cade moved silently through the ghostly labyrinth of the abandoned subway station, the faint drip of water echoing beneath the vast concrete canopy. His trench coat, soaked through, clung to his tall, angular frame as his tired eyes scanned the shadows that flickered and quivered like restless phantoms. He could feel the weight of the city pressing down oppressive, suffocating, a concrete cage where light struggled to survive. But tonight, the darkness was not just absence. It was a living, breathing threat. Shadows shifted unnaturally, detached from their owners, rippling like dark tides across cracked walls. Elias's breath hitched as he caught a movement sharp, calculated just beyond the reach of the flickering light. Agent Klein was here somewhere. The Umbra operative who had been sabotaging their every move, a ghost within the system, a shadow that had slipped beyond control. Elias's mind raced, piecing together the fragments of betrayal and deceit that had undermined their investigation. This confrontation was inevitable. He moved forward, senses honed by years of hunting the intangible. The stale scent of mold mixed with the metallic tang of blood, old or new, Elias couldn't tell. His own shadow stretched long and twisted at his feet, twitching as if warning him of the danger lurking ahead. Suddenly, A figure stepped out from behind a rusted pillar, a silhouette carved sharply against the dull glow of a failing overhead light. Klein's face was a mask of icy arrogance, eyes gleaming with cold calculation. Shadows seemed to cling to him unnaturally, as if they were extensions of his will rather than mere absence of light. Detective Cade, Klein's voice was low, silky with menace. You were persistent, admirable, but futile. Elias tightened his grip on the worn grip of his sidearm, though he knew this fight would not be won with bullets alone. Futility is a luxury I can't afford. Not while the city burns under your lies. Without warning, Klein lunged, forceful and precise. The fight was brutal, less a calculated battle and more a raw struggle for survival. Boots scraped wet concrete, fists collided with unforgiving impact, and every breath was a ragged testament to determination. Elias's training battled against Klein's cold efficiency, each blow a question of who would fracture first. Pain blossomed in Elias's ribs, sharp and burning, but he refused to yield. The duality of their conflict mirrored the fractured city itself, light against shadow, trust against betrayal, order against chaos. Klein's smirk faltered as Elias's resilience clawed through the darkness. Meanwhile, miles away in the cramped precinct office, Miravos sat bathed in the ghostly glow of multiple monitors. Her fingers flew over the keyboard, hacking through layers of encrypted Umbra communications. Every decrypted message peeled back another layer of the cabal's internal fractures, disloyal operatives, whispered betrayals, fractured alliances. Her piercing gaze flicked between lines of code and a photo of Elias, battered but unbroken. Despite the anxiety pounding in her chest, her resolve hardened. They were closer than ever to unraveling Umbra's grip, but the cost was mounting. Back in the shadowed alley where the fight had ended, Elias leaned heavily against the cold brick wall. Rain washed away the blood and grime, pooling at his feet in a broken mirror of his reflection. His shadow flickered erratically, a fractured echo of the man he once was and the uncertain path ahead. The city's neon glow faintly illuminated the scene, a melancholic symphony of light and darkness. Elias closed his eyes, the weight of betrayal and exhaustion pressing down. Yet within that fractured darkness, a spark of defiance remained fragile but unyielding. He knew the battle was far from over. Umbra's fractures were deepening, their chaos spreading like a virus. But so long as breath remained, Elias Cade would fight to reclaim control, to mend the fractures, or to be consumed by the shadows that walked without bodies. The night whispered promises of reckoning, and Elias was ready to face whatever came next.